Tony, good morning. Thanks for doing this.
It's my honor.
Well, I don't know about that. We're not, but no.
Well, it's just funny. The other day I was just talking to somebody, and I never do anything like this.
Yeah.
And people said you really should start doing stuff because And so when you walked up, it was kind of funny. All of a sudden I'm going, okay, well, here it is.
Here we go. We were talking about this on the way over here. It's like, can't believe you haven't been on more podcasts. Why is that?
I'm really a guy that's just not a technical guy.
Sure.
And I've always just been a guy that, I just like everything simple in my life.
Yeah.
And I love what I do. Every day I'm walking with guys, or I'm at my property where people come and do the boot camp, and I'm walking with 25 guys. And everything's just simple, and I keep busy as heck. And I do 100 properties a year, and I've done 2,400 properties total in the United States and 29 states, and I've done 180 boot camps. Wow. And I'm the longest running whitetail basically school in the country, and I've done it my way, and I never had to do anything. So, but, now everybody's into this, which that's great. It's America. But that's how a lot of the other guys are. They're not at the deer shows. I'm doing all the seminars, but they're just on podcasts and the internet. And that's where I'm weak. And I just got to decide now, as I'm getting older, I'm 64, do I need to just kind of change my strategy or just ride out the way I've always been and let it be that way?
Yeah. In the beginning of we watched part of the debate here with Don Higgins. Really enjoyed that. That was an excellent conversation. And Don mentioned you kind of paved the road for whitetail habitat consultants. And then Steve Bartella said you're the godfather of modern day whitetail management. So for someone listening that doesn't know you, some really key figures in our space have said really great things about you, and you really laid the foundation for everyone.
Well, I'm one of them old country boys, and I'm really one of the good old boys. And when I started this business, this shows you guys are going to just look at me and go, what? There was no food plot, guys, at a deer show that when I was there speaking.
Wow.
It wasn't invented yet. There was no minerals. There was no farm equipment because nobody was even doing food plots. And I was a guy that planted produce, and I'm talking about how to rearrange your property. And none of this technical stuff was there yet.
What made you even dive down that road?
What happened is I bought a farm right out of high school with trapping money. I was a big trapper. And I bought this property, and it has a river running through it. It's 52 acres, still own it today. It's where I hold my boot camps. And it only has 23 acres of woods, and you could go hunting for 3 days and not see a deer. And yet it was gorgeous. A river runs all the way through it, and I had oak trees and everything. But the deer didn't live there. I told everybody, I said it's woodpeckers and squirrels. And when I was trapping all the time, I would jump these big bucks all the time. And so I said, I don't think my farm, they don't even bet on here. So I started looking, and I couldn't find no place where deer were laying down. So I went on my trap line, started finding where all the deer bed, and I was just this guy that didn't care what people thought. I got down into the beds where they are, and I wanted to see how they looked and what they seen. Most of the time, they can't see 3 feet in any direction. In Michigan, they're in cattails. When they lay down, they can't see nothing. Most of the time, there's something over their head. A tree's lean, and it fell down, and they crawl underneath it. So I started looking at that, and I go back to my farm. You could look 200-300 yards in every direction. I said, I have none of this. So I'm just standing there a long time ago, and I happened to lean on a maple tree. I never even told anybody this before. I'm leaning on this little dinky maple that's a couple inches diameter, and I look up, and I go, 25 feet up and 20 feet up, there's cover like crazy. Down on the bottom, there ain't nothing. I said, I wish all that thickness was down here. And I grabbed that tree, and it moved a little bit, and I just reached over and grabbed it, and I took and pulled it down till I had it about waist high. And I'm looking around, and I'm going, man, if I went in here and got all these trees pulled down, it changed the whole look of this land. That's how it started. And then once I figured out deer beds and bucks and does are different, how they lay, does bed for convenience. So if you got food, the girls are going to take over the first thick spot in your woods because they don't want to take and make the fawns travel any farther than they have to. The bucks, they don't care how far they travel for food, water, and girls. They only bed where they feel safe. And what the biggest issue is is a buck spends 70% of his life on his belly. Out of the remaining 30%, 20% will be in his core area. So when a buck beds on your property, you're where he spends 90% of his daylight time. And if he lives across the road, you ain't ever going to see him more than 10% of your life. Well, what the other thing is, and this is the thing that will help a lot of people, is a lot of guys will pass up 1.5 and 2.5 and even 3.5s. And then they never get a stockpile of these great big bucks that are 4 and 5.5. And what they haven't figured out, and this was me studying deer, them deer, when they're 1.5 and 2.5, will bed in bedding areas that are marginal. But as they get older, they look at your woods and it's too open. Your food plots are too big. You have too many straight lines going through your property they got to cross. And blinds are not concealed. As they get older, they start learning what danger is. And this buck at 3.5 looks around and goes, I ain't staying here. And he's loyal to nothing but habitat. And you've been passing these bucks for 3 years, and now they moved down the road 5 to 8 miles. And some guy that ain't even doing anything, he just happens to have a thick woods and stuff. He keeps getting these nice bucks and don't understand where they're even coming from.
Yeah.
And someone else has produced them. So what you got to ask yourself, if you're passing up all these bucks and you ain't getting a stockpile, then you better be looking at your setups, because what it is you don't have beds that are set up for a mature buck. So another good way to explain it, if you have a bed in a river, horseshoe shape, the buck will always bed on the inside corner. He will never bed on the outside corner. The inside corner, he puts his back to the water. Coyotes, dogs, man, all predators will usually come from the land side. So now he can cross the creek, go out the back door. He can go left, right. And if you come across the water, any predator, he shoots right out the land side. They never bed on the outside curve, because now it's just the opposite. They can't see. He made blind sides to him for how the predator can enter. When he's on the inside corner, everything is perfect. So I walked over 2,400 properties. Once I started figuring out things, every day I'm in a classroom. I'm learning from everybody else's property and verifying what I know. So now I'm always telling people, right up here we'll find some beds. And they look at me, and I've never been on their land. I said, they'll be over here. And I'll go, yeah, right over here we should find a group of bedding areas. They should be pretty close together, semicircle. There'll be a doe group. And they're amazed that I can do it. And I go, guys, I walk the woods every day. If I can't tell you what's ahead, I need to get a different job.
So when we're on the bedding area topics, so we'll stick with that. But as you're laying out properties, are you laying out bedding areas to specifically hold deer, or are you laying those areas out so you're hunting those deer or hunting in close proximity to those beds, or is it both?
Well, here's how I look at all properties. The people that are hiring me so they can kill bucks. The first thing we need to do is find out where we can get in and out, and I pick stand locations because I can move any deer run to wherever I want. So what happens, most guys go out in the woods, they start looking, scouting, they find a bunch of deer runs, and here's a tree the size of a telephone pole that's right where all the runs are coming together. Well, it don't take anybody but 2 minutes to look at me and go, well, I'd look like a refrigerator hanging out of that tree. I'm too big. What I do is go, there's an oak big enough to hide us. It's easier to get in. I look at what way we want the wind and have many different styles of winds to hunt. And I go, that's what we got to pick. I pick that, then I build the bedding areas and everything around the stand location. That's why they're so deadly. And that's why for the last 12 to 15 years, I never have hunted over 3 days to kill my target buck. Because most of the time I'll kill them in the first to second day. It ain't that I'm a better shot than anybody else, but I have set the whole property up to make my stands be the center spot. And now I control where the does bed, the bucks bed. I rearrange it. My food plot is designed around my stand location. Mm-hmm. Now you got to adapt because some land is laid different, but basically that's what we need to do. It doesn't do us no good to build all the beds, and that's what a lot of guys do. They go out and they hear hinge cutting and stuff, and they just start cutting their woods without a plan, and then they can't even get in and out of their own woods. And what's crazy is I destroy as many beds as I build, because the deer are smart enough to take the high ground and all that. So what I got to do is how can you come into your property? So if we got a bench up there and got a nice hill and you got some valleys, I go, them deer learn that you come in this way. They're going to be beds up there. We go up there and go see what they're looking at. They're watching you. Now we can destroy them, go over the hill and build bedding areas that Mother Nature can't do.
How do you destroy a bedding area then?
Well, it's simply by putting debris in there that they cannot move and make it too low so they can't get underneath them, or drop a tree there and then just make it so they don't got no place to lay down. Then I go on the opposite side and they want to see. I give them a valley to watch where they can see every inch and make the bed superb. That Mother Nature can't do. Man got the gift of manipulating everything. So we go in and make this thing perfect. The thing is, they can't see us coming. It was all designed to give them a bed that they thought was great. I give them a picture window to watch, but it's where we don't come in. So that's some of the stuff.
I have to imagine it's almost like when Isaac Newton figured out gravity when he got hit in the head with an apple.
Yeah.
when you moved that maple tree down.
Yeah, everything
the
just changed.
Yeah.
And then once I did that, I built the bed, and I made 6 beds. Went and got some material from the house and the barn and rope and all the stuff to tie down stuff and manipulate the trees, chainsaws and all this. And I made some beds, and I told my buddies, I said, yeah, I went and made some beds for deer. And they laughed at me, and you're crazy. And anyhow, I left them alone. Then when it got closer to hunting season, I went out there and got in my stand when it was dark. And when it broke daylight, I can see these different beds, and there's bucks in them. And I'm going, what the heck? These bucks are right where I built that, and they're right underneath it. So what was funny, though, when I built them, I made them one-room school, a bedding area. That's why bucks are in it. Does, they don't lay down unless there's room for everybody. They're like a family table. So what I realized is that I built buck beds, but I didn't build doe beds. And then I started realizing that there's all kinds of stuff you need to do. So then when I was sitting in there hunting, the buck come out and there was a natural scrape. The buck get out of the bed because deer didn't bed. I was so proud I had buck beds. The buck walks over to the scrape. He spends about 5 minutes maximum there, rubs on a little thing, and then he jumps into my neighbor's fence, and here it is 2 hours before it's going to get dark, and he's already on the neighbor's. And I go, if he wouldn't have stopped at that scrape, spent 5 minutes, in less than 5 minutes, he'd been off my property. So then I realized, and then the buck, when he stood, he scanned everything. He could see every inch of that field. I said, he got all the information he needed in one corner, and he didn't need to walk around the field. That's where I started putting in grasses and screening, and now it's a giant maze, and the bucks can't see. And even the way you plan a field will determine how many fawns are born. It will tell you how long a buck will stay in it. It'll tell you how many rubs and scrapes you get. So if you guys got time, I don't know how much time we got here, but it'll only take me a few minutes to explain this.
Go for it.
Okay, so when you got there's a field on my thing, I do tests. That's why nothing's my opinions. I do tests to tell people stuff. So I got a 3.5 acre field. When it was one food plot, flat as a pancake, the buck comes into this corner, and he can see every inch of it. So he put a couple of rubs and a scrape in there. He'd average about 5 minutes, and off he'd go. Then every spring, a doe would have her fawns, and they will defend whatever they can see. So they have proven that does will defend 10 to 20 acres to have their fawns. So now if another doe comes out there, she'll go down there and kick at that other fawn. The meanest girl gets to have her fawn there. So then what I did is split it in 13 chunks with grasses and everything, and to hide it all. Now what happens, a doe only defends to where she can see. So now in that field where I used to only get 2 fawns, same amount of real estate, already owned it, planted with food. Now there's years each one of them sections can have a doe with their fawns. So a lot of years I'll have 8 to 10 fawns in that same field. I used to only get 2 because I basically put a curtain. No different. We can't see what's on the other side of this aisle unless we go on the other side. Then the buck comes to that one little spot in the corner now because it's 13 chunks. He puts rubs and scrapes, but he knows there's all these other things, but he can't see them. No different when somebody comes to a deer show, they don't pay to get in and walk down one aisle. They walk through the whole show to see what's in everybody's booth and what's here. So now the buck goes around in a 5-year study. I average about 75 rubs and scrapes per visit to that field. The other thing is he circled the whole field now because he can't see nothing from only that one corner, so now he has to move. The other thing it did is it used it up about 45 minutes to 50 minutes a time. When he's on my property doing something, nobody else can shoot him. That's still not the most important thing. It ain't the important part about I got that many more does. It ain't about the rubs and scrapes. It ain't even about the time. The best thing I teach people is how to kill big bucks, mature bucks, in a few days. In the old setup, I called it a one-dimensional. I'm always telling people, you got a one-dimensional stand here. And they go, what are you talking about? I said, well, it's one corner. Everything has to be perfect to win, and this is the only corner the deer are coming out. So now everybody wants to overhunt that because it's the only good corner. So it's one-dimensional. If you got 4 to 5 guys I'm walking with on a normal day, everybody overhunts it. Before soon, it ain't even no good. Because the buck circles my field, I can hunt any wind that's blown at me on any day because there's a corner that ain't going to be right. So now I made it so guys can hunt and not destroy their own property. So then what it does, it lets me kill him very quickly and get out of there, and now I even put less pressure on my property because it only takes me a day or two to go. So at the boot camp, we cover like 400 topics. We walk all this all day. I just keep on talking, and everything's done. So I can show the difference of all these different style buck beds, doe beds, how to break the food plots up, design, how to make the food be where you want at certain times, where to plant the different stuff, and this all creates movement.
As you're compartmentalizing those open spaces, does that look like just a grid section of like a quarter acre,
Yeah.
or is there something to the movement inside of that?
Yeah, it can be the lay of the land, and then you don't want everything to be perfect. But even like if you take and put a switchgrass, pampas grass, machanthus grass. At my farm, I use everything you can imagine because I don't care what you use. I just show you the plus and minus of each one. Like guys might want to use conifers. I said a screen from the road with conifers is 10 to 12 years minimum. If we use grasses, we're at 3 years. And I show them all the different ways that they can screen stuff, from making it happen in 1 year to making it take 10 years. I don't care which one they use. I'm just here telling most people that come and see me are older guys. We don't got years to waste, okay? I look at the 20-year-old guy, I go, you can plant a pine tree. I look over at a guy that's 65, I says, you need grasses, okay? And I said, I didn't invent this, just the way the world is.
Yeah, that's interesting. Something that you mentioned is scrapes, and I think some people think that you want a couple key specific scrapes, and some people think, from my perspective, is you want a lot of scrapes so they spend more time, lay more sign. Yeah. Explain that.
Well, a buck makes tons of scrapes, more than anybody ever even imagines. Okay, on my property on a normal year, I'm going to be between 300 and 400 scrapes.
On 52 acres.
On 52 acres.
That's a lot.
And I'm going to tell you, even the more bucks make bucks move more than the girls. People want to talk about the rut. Okay, if you have a big sanctuary, a big buck will go in there. He'll let little bucks bed with him and does. He ain't going to let another mature buck with him. So what happens if you got a big food plot, all the does come out, the little bucks come, and that buck is nocturnal because he's got a nice, neat package. He don't got no competition. So he stays put. When you go and build bedding areas all over your property, I can have a 4.5 living over here. And over here, I can have a 5.5. I make little bitty ones and give them perfect setups. But now I have bucks all over my property. And it ain't the does that get them up. The bucks now are worried about what the other buck's doing. And so now what they all do is get up and go into everybody else's areas and make rubs and scrapes. And that's why I shoot most of my bucks from 10:30 to 2:30, because they're moving all the time. And they would stay tight if they were in a big area. They wouldn't come out for food until night. They would have everything they need. Competition makes them go. So the best way to explain this too, because everybody knows dogs, if you take a dog, basically a male and a female to a park where there's been other dogs. You open up the door, the female will squat and pee anywhere. That male dog, when he jumps out, there's a row of bushes over here, trees. He's going to pee on each one of them. All day long, he lifts his leg, and he don't even got nothing left in him, but he's going to try to mark everything. Now what happens, a couple weeks later, you take him back, the doe will go there, and that dog knows every place he smelled and peed on last time. He will head the same way. People don't realize bucks are marking territory and licking branches, and it dictates their movement. If there's nothing on a fence row over there for them to mark, they ain't walking down it. There's no way to communicate. Just like that dog prefers to walk where all the other dogs walk because he's a male and he's competing.
Can you create that same level of competition by controlling the doe numbers on a parcel?
Well, in a way, but you still got to have many bedding areas so the deer are not, because most people don't understand how I get so many bucks and find 90 sheds in 2 years off that little property. And this year's going to be another good year. I always have good years. And if I have boot camps in January and February, I'll have low things because we walk every square inch of my property. If I wait until March, then the deer have dropped. So in March, I have the boot camps. We find tons of them because they ain't got spooked off yet. But I can take everybody through there and not destroy my property. Still only going to hunt a couple of days this fall, and I'll kill my target buck. So the doe numbers, I don't agree with everything. I'm basically always disagreeing with everybody. I don't know where all this stuff got written from, in my opinion. So here's the thing. They want a buck-to-doe ratio. It used to be 2 to 1, and then now they say elite properties 1 to 1. That is fine if you own 600 acres or something. Because what happens when you got huge properties, you need the does to be low because you got so much area, you got to have your bucks cruising so you can even see them, okay? But now let's go back and say you got 40 acres. Now you get your buck-to-doe ratio 1 to 1 or 2 to 1. Your buck is going to breed a minimum of 5 to 6 does. So he breeds your 1 doe you got for your lead property. He's still going to breed 5 more does. He's spending 2 days with each one of them does. So in Michigan, he's going to be gone for 10 days where you can use a gun for 2 months. He ain't ever coming home. So to me, the littler the property are, the more you have to understand you need a few more does than what most people believe because you ain't going to ever see your buck if you don't. So I got to give him enough girls, but to do that, now you better have your property grid. You better understand buck and doe beds. You better understand how to get movement because now you're getting more pressure to your property, but it can work as long as you match everything else.
What are the neighbors like where you're at? Because I'm so
They hate
sure.
me.
Do they? So
That's the best way to tell if you're a good deer hunter.
Uh-huh.
If your neighbors like you, you ain't that great. Okay? Because it's honest. It's just it's like
Jealousy
that in
thing.
everything. It's just I've killed big bucks forever.
But aren't they trying to mimic and copy
you would
some of the
think
things
now
that you're
there is
doing?
a couple of them that try to come to my boot camp, and I won't let them. I mean, I turn people down all the time. The point I'm getting at, most of them, if somebody was beating you all the time, instead of hating them, I'd want to go down and just talk to them. Mm-hmm. And anyone that talks to me for a few minutes realizes that I think outside the box and I have a lot of great information. They won't give me the time of day.
Mm. So let's say this. I'm your new neighbor, Tony, and I'm going to set up right on the fence line.
Yep.
What do you?
Well, that's what I show at my boot camps. I have a whole strategy to keep deer away from a property line. And I can control where a deer beds and where he can't bed. I can control which way he looks. People think it's hard. It's not even hard. So you can make deer do things that nobody even realized. That is my thing. Anything I figure out, I can use it 2 ways. I can use it to make my life easier, and I can make it harder for someone else to shoot my deer because I can control it. So a lot of guys would think, I'm going to give a basic thing. A lot of guys have a property, and they'll go, Tony, my neighbor's got to stand right there. So I don't want nothing done over here. I'd like to keep all our bedding on the other end. And I said, no, we want to put the bedding area right here. Well, he hunts right there. And I said, yeah, how's he going to get in it when they're here all day? The best thing to do is put beds right underneath a stand and make them all watch how he comes and goes. He can't come and go, and in a few times they're going to learn that he's coming. They're going to study the predator, and now they know where he's at. Now he can't kill him. If they're bedding over here and they can't see him get in, they'll walk right into his trap. So I don't want food. I don't want scrapes. I don't want stuff like that over by him. But actually, I can make beds, make it hard for him to ever get a shot that direction. But I can cut the brush and make holes, and I'll make them so when they're laying in their beds, because I get in there, yeah, that's his stand. He cannot get near that without them seeing him. I build the doe beds along his travel route, so they're underneath the brush, and they watch him try to walk in. Now they get a bus. I control what way they exit the thing. And what I just did is made his life miserable. I've been doing it forever. That's why the neighbors, they know I hold the deer. They just don't understand how to get them off my property.
So in that scenario where you're laying those beds out underneath someone else's stand based on their access routes to help protect them, are you specifically laying up another bedding area for those deer to go to that is more advantageous for you?
Yes, and then just like my neighbors, they want to, people want to drive four-wheelers down the property line. They want to walk. They know you got all the things. All they want to do is walk down that line. They own all these other woods, but you hardly ever see them over by them. Why? They know the deer on my place. So what they want to do is line up. So now what I got to do is get the deer the first part of the season when they come. I want them to see him coming and going, so now they go, we got a problem here. And then I give them another bedding area back farther that they can fall in. And deer are notorious to set on close to edges because they know that's where the predators come from. Dogs, coyote, man walk edges. So you give them an edge, and they'll utilize it until they don't think they're safe no more, and now I can move them in the interior. The point is now they don't want to go that way in the evening. Instead of going that way, they turn and come towards me.
How often do your neighbors peel off a buck that you have, a target buck that you have?
To be honest with you, the guys that live on my section, they don't ever kill a quality buck. They'll kill some immature bucks, but they don't get the big guys.
You walking 2,400 properties, is there a common theme? Because there's a lot to this, I can tell, but is there a common theme that all farms lack or all? Because I'm sure every farm you walk, there's clear improvements.
They're all different, but I'll tell you this. It don't matter where I'm at in the country. Most properties are not no more than 10% of their potential.
Wow.
Okay? Just like people don't understand buck zoning and zoning of the woods. So if your woods, a deer can see, like this whole room can see it, you're going to get a buck and a doe group in here, and they're going to control this whole thing. But now if we departmentalized it and made it so they can only see 70 yards, all of a sudden there'll be another doe group and more buck area on the other side of that. Then we go another 50 yards, make another screen, and all of a sudden we got 3 doe groups just because we blocked their vision. So just like us here at the deer show, you either buy a 10 by 10, a 20, but we all got a little curtain and a little mark telling us where our area is. Okay, you start going over to the next guy, they're going to go and say, hey, what are you doing? No different in the woods. Deer the same way. They got areas that they defend, no different than my 2 Rottweilers. They know their yard. They don't let no other dog come in that yard, and they know to stay in their little area. They get to, that's their home core.
Go ahead.
Kind of 2-part question. Is there anything on the land side that you completely turns you off, like going into a new farm? And is the strategy of breaking everything up into screen sections and being very compartmentalized or mazed?
Yeah, that's what I call it, maze concept.
Is there a capacity limit there where something's too small? Like, can you do that successfully on 5 acres versus 10?
I do every year. I'm going to do a couple 5 acres, couple 10 acres. One gentleman here today just said he only had 20-some acres. We can't build all these buck beds and stuff, but then you use a different strategy is we need to make sure them bucks are visiting your property. So what I create on a little property is make sure it's a social hub. So we want food, lots of scrapes, lots of places to rub. And now every buck in the neighborhood wants to stop there because there's so much activity there where they can mark. Now the guy don't control the bedding most of the time, but yet when he waits until around the 25th of October and a cold front's coming in, he's going to have bucks all over his little piece because they come there to work the scrapes and rubs and all that. So there is different strategy. And the one thing the more The more properties broke up, the better. But one of the biggest problems I have is a lot of guys go and buy a nice mature woods, and they look beautiful, but the trees are all big. Well, he's got timber value, but he bought it for deer hunting, and that's fine. But now we got to go in and log before we can build all this other stuff. And so now, time he logs and have new growth, he's losing 2 to 3 years. So I always tell everybody, if you're buying it and you're really buying it just for hunting, you're better to buy something, especially if you're an older guy, you want to buy it that it's ready to start fixing and not have to wait 2, 3 more years to really get it super. Now, we can change it in 1 year and make a big difference, but I like going in and let's just go in and get it super set up, and now we can hunt it from then on.
What's your relationship with invasives like honeysuckle and things of that nature?
Well, there's plants that ain't great, but the thing is, most of the stuff that people hate are still good deer habitat. So you got to find a common balance. But, you know, just like a lot of guys hate autumn olive. Well, you can't go to an autumn olive property in Michigan that's where all the deer ain't. That's where they're bedding. And the guys want to clean it out. And I go, what would this field be if it was gone? They have you plant this grass that it don't even hide a mouse. And I go, guys, we go into there, they love it. You just don't want it to control your whole woods. But I even like spice bush. It grows in mature woods, and it's the only thing that keeps low growing underneath the canopy. So in key areas, we want stuff like that. And then we don't want to go and plant it. But if it's there, instead of just flipping out and trying to take years to kill it all, I go, guys, you want to eradicate it. These are the areas. Them are bedding areas. We're going to use it for our cover. And we're going to rearrange it and make it a plus instead of a negative.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned October 25th, and obviously you're killing most of your deer within 3 days.
Yes.
When does the Tony bell ring of it's time to get serious? Is it the 25th on?
Yeah, 25th on, or it can be a week early if it's cold snap coming. But I'm always looking for a cold snap, a cold front to come in. And them deer have been going to all the scrapes and everything, and they ain't smelt nobody. And my neighbors are hunting every day. And when it starts to get good, they're not hunting, because what happens is they've been hunting every day since it opened, after work, weekends, and now they've been doing that for almost a month, and then now it's getting good time, and they go to their wives or girlfriend, whatever, and go, yeah, I'm going to really hunt hard this weekend. They go, no, you're not. You've been out there for 3 weeks, and I haven't said nothing. Now it's family time. And it's amazing. They burned up all their bonus on dog days. And then when it's prime, they're not hunting as much. And I'm a guy that don't even worry about it. The season opens, I didn't pick that date. It wasn't a good date. The DNR picked it. And what else do they do right? I don't like most of them because they don't understand deer. Mm-hmm. So guys, to me, I don't get nervous and I wait until the bucks want to move. If you can't kill that buck in 3 times out in the early season, you're far better off to just forget about him for a while and back off and let him go, because if you keep hunting, he's going to figure you out at night, and before you know it, you're going to have a hard time killing him. Mm-hmm. I used to hunt every single day, didn't care about birthdays, anniversaries, or nothing. And I realized I was my own worst enemy, because I went every day and the deer figured me out, and they were writing articles how I'm a late season specialist. The article should say I make so many mistakes early, it takes me till the end of the season to relocate and re-kill him. Now I don't touch nothing. I leave him alone and I kill him in a couple of days. Why? Because I get him walking by my tree stand and he never knows I'm there, and I wait for a cold snap. And now I know he's going to show up during daylight hours, and I'm there.
Mm-hmm. Talk about choosing those stand sites at the beginning of that process and the complementary assets, I guess, that you're building around them. Because, like, late October, people think scrapes.
Yeah.
Are you placing mock scrapes? I know you're a big proponent of scrapes, time spent on your parcel. But I guess walk us through that process of what else is tying in those stand locations.
Well, it's the bedding area. It's the sneak travel corridor. It's food. I have little watering holes. Basically, I just give the deer everything they want by my stand. And a long time ago, I used to tell people you have a rut farm. You have a post-rut farm. People would look at me, what are you talking about? And I said, well, let's say a post-rut farm. Here we're in Michigan, you own a big swamp. The deer ain't even in your swamp because it's mostly like a cattail swamp. After the first day of gun season, this is where all the deer run and they lay in there. They're not there the first part of October. So now if you had stands set up and you start hunting the 1st of October and you keep hunting and hunting and hunting, when they do come over here, they start smelling all your scent. Now they don't want to run there when it would have been a good post rut. Now what I learned to do a long time ago is actually get them a farm where they have all it from the early season all the way to the post rut. They got bedding areas that hold deer when the shooting's going on, and they still have a nice setup for the first part of the season. But what I concentrate on is that basically just before the rut kicks on, that's the easiest time to kill a buck because he's predictable. When he's with the girl, we don't know which one he came in with. And now they're doing things they normally don't do because them two are trying to stay away from the other deer. They don't even bed in the same area. So now I said the best time to kill him is when he's the most predictable and he's on his feet. Mm-hmm. But most guys have done so much that they ain't got him patterned now at that time because they gave Buck too many clues, and now he's hooking, and that's why a lot of guys have to keep looking around and trying to put more cameras out and stuff because the buck has changed his movement. The only reason he changed is because he knows the predator's after him.
How long have you owned your home farm?
Since basically 82.
82. So there's been a long progression of figuring these things out, doing things different.
Oh, I still even study, yeah.
So are you at a point where you no longer have to scout, or do you use trail cameras? Like what? Or do you just have everything so dialed in? It's October 25th. These are kind of the deer I know that are around in the area. First cold snap, I'm out there.
Gotta shut that off. What I do is I constantly keep learning because that's what you find out stuff all the time. But at the same time, I started using cameras. I'm old school, like I kind of told you guys before. I never used cameras. I was a trapper. I'm a true woodsman. And there ain't nothing wrong with cameras and all the stuff that's at these shows. But I will make this point. If you learn, what I take great pride at my boot camp is teaching people woodsmanship. I can tell you on a run whether there's bedding areas up ahead by the droppings and how the run is designed. Where they travel through your property, where they bed on it, just by the runs will tell you everything. Okay? Most guys do not know none of that. I teach them that stuff, and then I said, now you go and buy the other stuff, and it gives you that total picture. But if you rely on too much gadget, then what happens, you never become a true woodsman, and now if it ain't on camera or the deer's doing something different, you don't know what to do. And so I love cameras because I got them on my property, and I like to, see the pictures of a buck. Nothing gets you excited. But the point is I killed 90% of my bucks before I ever used anything like that. It's a great tool to help people now move in, but I still believe people should become true woodsmen first and then get the other stuff because you don't want to, everybody wants everything instantly. And I go, guys, learn to rook your woods, learn where the deer runs go, start studying at my boot camp. I teach everybody how to look at the woods through a trapper's mind. Then it makes everybody be 10 times the hunter. Now you put your cameras in, you put your other stuff in if you want to use lures and stuff like that, but most of the stuff will be hit anyhow. But there's all kinds of other things you can add to it to make your thing fun. The point I'm getting at is learn to be a true woodsman. And I'm one of them guys, I said my weapon and my brain is what kills my bucks.
So someone listening to this right now, they think, I'm probably not a very good woodsman. I do rely on, there's a lot of people that are younger. All they know is trail cameras.
That's what it is, because they didn't have, my dad and stuff didn't know this stuff. He was a hunter, but, I remember one day, and nothing against my dad's been dead for probably 11 years now, and I can barely still talk about that. That's how close I was with my dad. But I remember when I was a little kid, I always wanted to know what was going on. I was just that kid, I always asked why. So I remember we went in the woods one day deer hunting, and we sat down on this log, and I'm looking around, and I go, Dad, why did you pick this spot? And I'll never forget this. My dad looked at me. He goes, there's room for both of us to sit. And that's why we didn't see nothing. My dad was a good guy, hard worker, but he wasn't a deer hunter. He's a guy that went out, once in a while he got a buck, very rarely, most years he didn't, and that's because he never studied the deer. I was the one that's going, man, I want to know, well, where do they bed? How many girls do they breed? How much water do they consume? And I want to know everything about them. And now when I make a decision, I'm always seeing deer and seeing lots of things. So I always tell everybody, knowledge will always be your best friend.
How does someone become a good woodsman? Is there any good resources? Obviously, your boot camp would be an excellent one.
Yeah, I'd be honest with you guys. There is nothing out there, and I'm not an arrogant man. I'm overweight. I wasn't even good in school. I don't hide nothing. I'm one of them guys that I believe, don't give a skeleton in the closet. You got something that ain't great, bring it up right in front of everybody, and then that throws that all out. So you know what? I get on stage, I go, look at me. But there's nobody that has a school and a resources like I show people in that 2-day course. I get into everything. I get into deer behavior. I get them to understand the bucks, how they look at the world, how the does look at the world, how the pecking order from the alpha doe to the beta doe, all the way down on the fawn, how everybody's communicating, how your land dictates how they use it, how to make great stand locations, and how to be a ghost in the woods to kill the ghost of the woods. And that's what I do.
Mm-hmm. With your farming background and produce background, how impactful was that with food plots?
It was excellent. I mean, you know, it's kind of funny how life turns out. You don't know what you're going to do. When I was in school, I hated school. But I thought, you know what? I think I'd like to be a forester when I grew up. I knew I wanted to be outside. So as a little kid, I wouldn't read nothing that the teachers wanted. But I'd go to the library, I'd get books on plants and trees, and I'd go in the woods, because we lived by a woods and a little creek. And I'd go out there and I figured out every plant and tree as a kid, because I thought I was going to be a forester. Then I decided, you know what? I'd like to be a professional trapper. Fur was big. So I self-taught myself. I read everything. I made journals. I still have them today where I drew all the different tracks and all this. And I studied everything about animals. I wanted to know what dropping this belongs to, you know. So then I studied all that kind of stuff. And I understood trees. Then when I got in high school, I said, you know what? I'm going to buy a farm and be a produce farmer. I'll have greenhouses. That way I can basically, in the fall, I'm all done. I can now hunt and trap, and I got all the fall off. If I'm a regular farmer, they're just starting. So what I need to do is be produce, picking all summer tomatoes, sweet corn, and cantaloupe. So we opened up a fruit stand. We had greenhouses and a gift shop. So we were busy in the spring, but it wasn't hunting season. So I built my whole life around my passion. And that's how this all got started, is just me building what I wanted my life to be like. That's all it was. And so, anyhow, I became the produce farmer. And then I wanted to know how everything grew, so I grabbed all the books in Michigan State and them. They'd have books telling you how much nitrogen, potash, zinc, magnesium, all the trace minerals, boron, everything a plant needed, it would tell you what they needed in a year. Then I started going to the co-op before they had all these trace minerals. I said, yeah, I want this mixture here. This is my tomato field. I'd taken 26 soil samples of my little farm. This is going to be a tomato patch. Here's what it needs. This is going to be my sweet corn. I got to have so many pounds of zinc per acre. And they were literally buying stuff and made this little scoops in there. And now it's nothing. They do that. But back then, 30 years ago, nobody did all that stuff.
And doing that for food plots, how important is that for palatability and for deer to find that food plot more attractive?
Especially like in Michigan where you cannot use minerals or feed. The only thing you can do is build your soil up and make your plant better. And now when they eat it, they get more things. So the other thing we do is high oil corn. And what we do is high oil corn has 10 to 12% more oil. Standard corn only has 4%. It has 235 more calories than regular corn. Also, the oil is what holds all the trace minerals. So because the oil's in there, it has all this extra vitamins for the deer. Then, what's neat about this is I took Roundup Ready high oil corn, basically ethanol corn. I mixed it with 70% Roundup Ready soybeans, 30% corn. I plant it with a grain drill, and now there's no rows. I used to plant the field with just corn and beans. Then one year I started going, long time ago, planting all beans with my grain drill. Then I'd get my corn planter and plant right through the beans like I never planted nothing. The corn would come up and they both would grow great. The point is the deer detasseled it and desilked all the corn, and then it wouldn't even be the 1st of November, and all my corn's gone. Same acreage now, because all the corn comes up and there's no rows, the deer don't walk down it, because when you got it in rows, you're making deer runs, just like when they browse next to the run. So now what happens, the deer won't walk in the summertime because you can't see 1 foot in any direction. So they don't leave it alone. It all makes big ears. Then when the ears dry down and the leaves, they can see it now. I'll have corn until March. Every year since I've done that, I have corn all the way until they shed and it starts greening up. Same acreage. All I did is change the way I laid it out and planted it.
That's really interesting. Because that's the biggest issue when planting just corn or just beans. They
now,
never
there
last.
will nobody. Once they do this, they'll never do it the other way. And if you just plant beans, you lost all that tonnage of corn. You plant corn, you lost all that tonnage. Then the two work good together, because what happens, beans throw off nitrogen, the corn grows quicker, it gets taller, it makes the beans taller, they set more pods. Now they produce all this nitrogen, the corn steals the nitrogen from the beans that don't utilize it, and now you made a thing. So now I had to go down to Louisville, Kentucky the other year and do a seminar for farmers that don't even like deer, and now there's several universities doing studies on corn and beans, because if they can get them together, they say they could raise the population tonnage off these fields over 10%. You do that all over the country, they'll solve any world problem of feed, and in the future, they're going to have a stockpile. Thing is, they got to figure out how to make it so they can combine this stuff. The point is, once they get started on something, man's gift was, we will figure it out. There will be some farm boy that will figure out how to make that harvest both, and look what that will do. And it all started out with a guy just trying to get more deer.
That's fascinating.
So
yeah, the double crop of the two most popular grain.
And one of the biggest things I think is one of my strongest points in life, I don't worry about it, guys. When you're 6'6" and weigh 170 pounds and got blue eyes, guys, we all have issues, and we all may think things. I'm one of them guys, when I get up on stage, I know deer. I don't let nothing else get in my way, and I go, the only way to find out something is to be fearless and don't think what other people are going to think about you. So when you get down in a little deer bed and you're sitting there like a deer and you're a grown man, your buddies might snicker at you, but when you get done figuring it out, they want you to show them how to do it. Okay? So I'm always telling you, don't worry about what other people, because people are going to like you or hate you, and there ain't nothing you can do about it. Just be who you are. Mm-hmm. And I think that's good for young people, because a lot of people are afraid to do something or even go and try something. If you believe you're good at something and you want to do it, just go at it full force and don't worry about what the rest of the people say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Good advice.
That's really good advice. Is there any specific hunting things that for someone that's newer or younger and maybe they don't have access to a private farm, but what are some things that people could do to make their season a little bit better?
Well, you need to start understanding that there's basically, you got the pre-rut, the scrape period, you got the rut, you got the post-rut. That animal, every 10 days, his mind's changing on what he's doing. And most people do not understand how it's like, here it is, we'll just use my favorite time. Here it is, towards the end of October, it's a cold front, and you're sitting in a stand, and there ain't a scrape in front of you. His whole mind is only going to licking branches. Now, you may catch him traveling to a scrape area, but wouldn't it be better to be sitting someplace where there's a whole bunch of scrapes, because that's his mind. Mm-hmm. Then you're hunting out in the middle of on a field edge or a fence row, and it's the postseason. Gun season's already came in. The chances of catching a mature buck out in the open is slim none. Now you need to understand, you need to be where the thick cover is and be hunting as close to that as you can without tipping your hands and letting him know that you're out there. So there's things you have to change as the season's going to be in the right place at the right time, but you got to understand the deer's mind and his behavior, what he's after.
Have you ever wished that you did not live in Michigan and you lived in an area? How many 200s do you think you'd have?
I'm killing old deer.
Yeah.
They just don't have no score.
Yeah.
I killed a 6.5 this year. Okay.
In Michigan?
No, this was Indiana. I shot that. I shot a 5.5 this year on my place. And a couple nice bucks in Michigan. Same day, I shot 2 bucks, 5 minutes apart, tagged out. Then I went down to Indiana. Then Michigan and Ohio, I could have shot nice bucks. Here's what's sad. I had 150s and 160s in Ohio, and they were 3.5-year-old bucks. I shoot 6.5-year-old deers, and they didn't hit the 150.
Yeah. Right.
It's called where I'm hunting.
Yeah.
But if I hunted in the Midwest someplace, I'd be one of them guys that would have so many big mature bucks. You know, you can't say they're all going to be big, but I would have had a wall full of these Boone and Crockett bucks. I'm shooting bucks. I've killed bucks 8.5, 7.5, 6.5. That's what I shoot. And in my seminar, I show the body size, and everybody goes, I've never even seen a deer like that. And I go, look at his rack, though. It's a 145-inch buck. And yet, if that buck was grown in the right state, I love Ohio. I think it's one of the best states in the country. It does have a lot of hunting pressure still, and everybody comes here. But I do believe that in Ohio, you could almost grow a monster buck any county. Where in most states, you have a zone area that you can pull it off, and other places that's, you're barking up the wrong tree. We all wish we had something different, but I'm never going to move. I already knew that from a young start. Me and my wife, we love that farm. We love everything about it. We ain't going to retire someplace else. To be honest with you, I'd just soon be buried right there and no place else because it's mine. And, but yes, I struggle, but then a long time ago, I go, Tony, as long as you're killing mature bucks, that's all that matters. Yeah. That's all I want to do. And my wife said something to me one time that, I used to be concerned about what people thought and the bucks and just 100 million things enter people's heads. One day some people said some stuff that I heard about me, that was bad and it was all lies, a poacher and stuff. And it just used to drive me crazy. And my wife said to me, and you hate it that they're right sometimes. She said, what does it matter? They don't know you. The only people that should matter is your family, your friends, and me. If we know who you are, that's all that matters. And I thought about that for a little bit. And it made me change the whole way I get on stage and talk and everything. Because it is true, guys. People like different products. They like different people. They like everything. And you ain't going to change none of that. So you just better be happy with yourself.
Yeah.
So I know I'm weird and I get off on things because anytime you meet somebody that's really good, the first thing should say is he's a little weird. Because we think differently.
Sure.
That's all it is. We have... I don't watch TV. I don't know any sports. I don't even know anybody that's on the Lions or any of my home state. I don't know anything that's going on. My buddies tell you stats and all this stuff, and I'm like, oh, who's playing in the Super Bowl? 4 days before it's coming. I don't know.
Yeah.
The other day I watched football just because the Lions have never been there, and I heard everybody going, they're finally going to be it. So I sat and watched a couple of games, which was fun. Did it with my buddies. But I ain't a guy that watches TV. I'm a guy that stays focused on whitetails and Indian artifacts. It's all that interests me. Now, if my wife's listening, I have 3 passions in life. My wife, artifacts, and deer.
In the correct order.
Yeah, in the correct order. And if she ain't listening, I only have 2.
No, that's great. Well, really appreciate your time here, Tony.
No problem. I
enjoyed it. Where what's your website so people can, if they want to inquire?
It's TonyLapratt.com, and we have Ultimate Land Management is what I do, and Whitetail Boot Camp, and I'm speaking at the show every day here. in PA, and I'm all over. I'm going to be speaking in Wisconsin, Columbus, Ohio, Novi, Michigan. So most all the major deer shows hire me every year to do seminars.
Wonderful.
Because I love to do what I do,
Yeah.
if you can tell.
Absolutely. Well, we
Okay.
really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It's been my honor, too.